Hi, my name is Tom Wilson. I'm a priest over at All Saints Episcopal Church, and this is the sermon that's going to be on March the 30th, 2014. Um, the lessons for that day are 1 Samuel, where Samuel chooses the successor for Saul, and he has to look deeper. Ephesians 5, 8 through 14, and then John 9, 1 through 41, which is about the healing of the man born blind, and the 23rd Psalm, which is the Good Shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. Um, the lessons for today have as their theme the tension between seeing as God sees versus seeing as human vision alone. We have the story of Samuel, who's guessed wrong about choosing Saul as king of Israel because Saul had only looked on the outside of Saul. Samuel had only looked on the outside of Saul and had missed the vision of the troubled man whose insecurity would prove disastrous. In this story, God sends Samuel to Bethlehem to look over the sons of Jesse as suitable successors to Saul. But Samuel still wants to look only at outside appearances. But God guides him to look deeper and to choose David. The psalmist will later have a song attributed to David, the 23rd Psalm, which reflects a person who's surrounded by his enemies, but knows that he sees through God's eyes what cannot be seen with the eyes of humans, that the Lord is his shepherd and sets a table before him in the presence of his enemies. The theme of the tension between God's vision and human blindness will continue throughout all the gospel, throughout all the Bible. For instance, it is the center of the message of the seers, the people who see, the prophets, such as the prophet Jeremiah, who sees with God's eyes and declares, hear now this, O foolish people, and without understanding, which have eyes and see not, which have ears and hear not. Jesus lives his ministry as one who is a prophet, who sees, a seer, who sees with God's vision, but also one who brings God's vision to life and lives it in everyday life. The evangelist John recounts the story of Jesus and the man born blind as a motif of the tension between human blindness and divine wisdom. And his focus is to let each of those of us who follow Jesus to continue to intervene and to resolve this tension. The ministry of Jesus brings this man born blind a new vision, but the ones who see with only human eyes continue to live in a deep spiritual darkness, blindness. John will call that kind of blindness sin. Now, we have a mistaken tendency to be literal and see sin as things we do that are bad in and of themselves, and sinners as bad people. However, the biblical definition of sin is about missing the point of life. And you and I are sinners when we miss the point. We are, at times, incredibly blind to the reality of God's presence in the space within and between us. And Lent is the time when we focus on our tendency to rely on human vision alone, and thereby enter into the darkness of divine blindness. The 17th century poet John Milton went completely blind when he was in middle age, and he wondered of what further use he was. He had been very successful in Puritan political circles and in writing, but when he was blind, he feared it would end his ability to write. This was long before he was to write his greatest poetry, such as Paradise Lost. And as part of his prayers, he wrote a sonnet about his discussion with God about the blindness. And here's how it goes. When I consider how my life is spent ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve there with my Maker, and present my true account, lest he returning chide. Does God exact day labor, light denied? I fondly asked, but patience to prevent that murmur soon replied. God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly. Thousands at his bidding speed, and post o'er the land and ocean without rest. they also serve who only stand and wait. The blindness that Milton goes through becomes his opportunity to see with God's vision. And he enters into the ancient myths and sees the dreams of God with his poetry. 4 years after his human blindness begins, he is even able to have a second marriage in which he never sees his wife with his human eyes, but he sees her with a divine vision of love. Now, she will die in childbirth, and when she dies, he writes another sonnet as his prayer of dealing with the pain of her loss, of his loss for her, and with the hope in the life to come that he will see her fully as he sees her now in his dreams. And this is the way that poem, that sonnet 23 goes. Methought I saw my late espoused saint, brought to me like ascetes from the grave, whom Jove's great son to her glad husband gave, rescued from death by force, though pale and faint, mine as whom washed from spot of childbed taint. Purification in the old law did save, and such as yet once more I trust to have full sight of her in heaven without restraint. Came vested all in white, pure as her mind, her face was veiled, yet to my fancied sight love, sweetness, goodness in her person shined, so clear as in no face with more delight. But oh, as to embrace me she inclined, I waked, she fled, and day brought back my night. One of the reasons that I've spent so much energy on dreams is because I think that as we busily go around in this life, we have selective human blindness to our world, our very selves, our neighbor, and our God. In the 8 hours when we no longer are using our eyes because they are shut, we are visited with hints of God's vision in our dreams. Our ego, our human thinking, wants to have nothing to do with these distractions because they get in the way of our struggle to consume more stuff and have more experiences, to live with more, but to skate blindly over the surface. Our task is to bring the unconscious to consciousness and to see what God might be showing us so that we might live fully in this life and so that we might also see the life that is still to come. I know I've hit you with 2 poems already, but I'm going to go for a three-peat with another poem about seeing. This one by Mary Oliver. It's called When Death Comes. When death comes like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through that door full of curiosity, wondering what it's going to be like, that cottage of darkness. And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I look upon time as no more than an idea. And I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy and as singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does towards silence. And each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. And when it's over, I want to say all my life, I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. And when it's over, I don't want to wonder if I've made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened and full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. Thank you. Good night.